2.5. No, this really is small. I wonder how high it is.
Oh, hello there. Oops, no. Well, as you can see, I'm measuring my desk.
Let's see how high this is. I don't know. Do you think my desk is too small?
I mean, after all, I'm the harbor master here in the big harbor.
That's a pretty important job, having such a small desk. Do you think maybe if I had a bigger desk, I'd feel more important? You know, our friend Theodore was wondering about feeling more important just the other day. And then, something very surprising happened to him.
It all began at the morning work meeting. The dispatcher was telling the tugs their jobs for the day.
George and Foduck,
The dispatcher began.
today I have another important job for you. There is an oil supertanker to be brought in. Proceed immediately.
Then the dispatcher turned to Theodore and Hank.
Today, you'll be replacing broken marker buoys. That is all.
Hank set off cheerfully, but Theodore began to feel a little bothered. See, he wanted the kind of job that George and Foduck had. I wish I could have a more important job, Theodore said to himself. A bit later, Theodore and Hank were working away, replacing broken marker buoys around the harbor that day. Now, as you know, Theodore and Hank work together a lot, and they even have a special whistle signal to each other. It doesn't really mean anything except, "Hello, I'm happy." It was their own special whistle for each other. That evening, as the sun was sailing out to sea, Theodore and Hank were talking about their day. "Marker buoys are a lot heavier than they look, aren't they, Hank?" Theodore was saying. "They probably weigh as much as a small fishing boat," said Hank, "or at least a big fish." "We did a good job together," said Theodore. "We are a good team, aren't we, Theodore?" agreed Hank. The two tugs felt great. It always seemed that being together and talking about things together was as much fun as doing them. "Well," said Hank sleepily, "it was a nice day. Good night, Theodore." "Good night, Hank," replied Theodore. "It was a nice day." Theodore glanced over at the other side of the dock, where George and Foduck were resting. They always get the more important jobs, Theodore thought. I wish I could be a more important tugboat. The next day, after the tugs had finished their work, they started to float back to their regular places at the Great Ocean Tug and Salvage Company dock. That's when George turned to Theodore and said the most surprising thing.
Theodore, do you want to dock beside me?
Well, Theodore was very surprised, because he had always thought George's side was the more important side of the dock. You see, George is an ocean tug, and he always docks with the other ocean tugs, Emily and Foduck. And as a harbor tug, Theodore always docked with the other harbor tug, Hank.
Emily is away on an ocean job,
Explained George.
so the place beside me is empty.
But, said Theodore, I'm not an ocean tugboat. Not yet,
Oh, that's okay,
said George.
You have been the tug in charge here in the big harbor before.
Now that was true, thought Theodore. That was pretty important. So, Theodore happily agreed to dock beside George. Where are you going, Theodore? It was Hank. Oh, just over to the other side of the dock, replied Theodore. He was trying to sound like it really wasn't that important at all. I'm going to dock beside George tonight. But, said Hank, we always dock together. It's just for tonight, Hank, repeated Theodore. Because Emily's away, and because, well, George asked me to. Theodore settled into his new place at the dock, right there beside George. It does seem nicer on this side of the dock, Theodore thought to himself. He could even see all the way past Benjamin Bridge. But the best thing of all was the special feeling Theodore had of being with the bigger ocean tugs. It made him feel special, more important. The next morning, Theodore lined up beside the other ocean tugs, and wouldn't you know it, That day, the dispatcher chose Theodore for an important job. He'd be working with George, moving a giant oil rig. Hank was sent to replace broken marker buoys again. "See you later, Theodore," called Hank. As Theodore and George worked away, it was almost magical to Theodore how just changing his place at the dock had seemed to change him. He was already feeling like a more important tugboat. Theodore was so excited that he made his special whistle signal. Just to say, "Hello, I'm happy." But George hadn't heard Theodore's special whistle before, and he thought it might be a special kind of emergency whistle. So he tried to stop the oil rig right away. "Why are you slowing down, George?" called Theodore.
I thought there was an emergency because you blew your whistle like that,
replied George. "Oh, that! It's a special signal," said Theodore quickly. "Hank always answers back. It's just for fun."
"Well," said George crossly, "this is an important job. It's not supposed to be fun. From now on, use only the regular whistle signals."
Theodore felt bad about giving George the wrong signal. But then he thought, I guess more important tugboats don't have special whistle signals because, well, they're happy anyway. Hank was floating quietly at his place at the dock when Theodore returned from working with George. Theodore turned off his engine so he could slip silently past Hank to his new place. He might be resting, Theodore thought to himself. "Theodore, you going to dock with George again?" asked Hank quietly. "Oh," replied Theodore, as if he was deciding right then and there. "Maybe just tonight. Emily still isn't back." "Oh, that's okay," replied Hank. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Theodore, are you still my friend?" "Sure I am, Hank," answered Theodore, trying to sound convincing. It's just that, well, things are different now." Hank stared at Theodore, and Theodore stared back at Hank. Things did seem to be different now, and they both knew it. Theodore wanted to talk with George all about their exciting day, moving the giant oil rig together. "Oil rigs are a lot heavier than they look," began Theodore.
"Oh, I moved a giant supertanker all by myself once,"
said George, cutting Theodore off impatiently.
"And they're much heavier than oil rigs."
"Well," said Theodore, "still, we did a really good job together. We're a good team, and we..." But George cut Theodore off again.
"Supertankers are the heaviest ships on the ocean."
And then George began to tell Theodore all about moving that supertanker, talking louder and louder and blowing up more and more smoke as he got excited about his story. This isn't like talking with Hank, thought Theodore. In fact, Theodore couldn't really talk to George at all. All he could do was listen, and cough in George's smoke. No whistle signals when I'm happy, and now I can't even talk about the things that happened today. Being a more important tugboat wasn't turning out to be as good as he had imagined. Theodore drifted quietly over to his new place at the dock. "Good night, Hank," called Theodore softly, even though he knew his friend couldn't hear him. "Good night, Theodore," Hank said to himself, even though he knew Theodore couldn't hear him. The next morning, Theodore was just waking up when he saw a sight that made his heart leap. It was Emily. "Emily's back," Theodore said to George. "Oh, I guess that means I can't dock here beside you anymore." Theodore tried to look disappointed, but inside he was feeling very relieved.
"Oh,"
said George,
"there's lots of room here. Ha! You can dock beside me forever."
Well, Theodore just stared at George and didn't say a word. He couldn't say a word. He had a big lump in his throat. Forever? That was a long, long time. A little later, Theodore helped George take a ship out of the harbor. Theodore couldn't stop thinking about living on the other side of the dock forever. He wanted to be a more important boat, and he thought that's where more important tugboats do have their regular place, but somehow, feeling more important just didn't make him feel happy. In fact, right now, Theodore felt sad. Just then, he heard a whistle, a special whistle signal that said, "Hello, I'm happy." It was Hank, replacing another broken marker buoy. Now, Theodore didn't want to whistle back. He was afraid George would get upset again. But somehow, just hearing Hank's whistle made Theodore feel a little better. After Theodore had finished work, he stayed behind in the harbor. He was thinking about being more important and about his more important place at the dock. But mostly, he was thinking about how much he missed Hank. The other tugs were all at the great ocean dock when Theodore finally appeared. Theodore was headed towards the dock, the ocean tugs side of the dock. Now to Hank, it looked like Theodore and George were talking about the day's adventures. Hank turned sadly towards his part of the dock. It was a whistle, a special whistle signal. Hank whistled back and slowly looked around. "Theodore, what are you doing here?" "Oh," replied Theodore, as if it really didn't matter as much as it did. "Oh, I thought I'd come back to my old place at the dock right here. But it's just regular harbor tugs on this side," said Hank sadly. "Not more important ones like George." "Well, I was just telling George," replied Theodore, "that all the tugboats are important to me." "Me too," said Hank with a smile on his voice. Theodore slid into his old place at the dock beside Hank. It felt just right. "Good night, Theodore," said Hank. "It was a nice day." "Good night, Hank," said Theodore. "It was a very nice day. And I think tomorrow will be even better."
You know, the next day, Theodore, George, and Hank all worked together. And they discovered that the most important feeling of all was the feeling of being good friends. Now, what was I doing? I was doing something. Oh, yes, I was measuring my desk. Let's see here. Oh, I made this dent when I dropped a plate of sea biscuits on here. See, the first time I made sea biscuits, they were a little hard. Oh, whoops. And the second drawer that squeaks. You know, this desk may not be big and important, but I really do like it. I don't know, we're kind of a team. Well, I better get back to work. But I'll be waiting right here for you next time you come visit us in the big harbor. We'll see you all again next time. So long. Oh, no. See that? That's a very small hat rack. I'm taller.
Theodore, he's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore and Emily, oh, Hank and George and the harbor master too.